Hi, everybody. This is Uwais Qayyum from Technical Marketing Engineer Group, coming in live from the beautiful city of Toronto. And today on this session, I'm joined by two of our moderators, Chris Kelly and Anilash, who will be helping us moderating this session. So before I begin and we go ahead with discussing what we're going to show you on this session, a little bit of housekeeping. So I will be going over some of the slides, and after the slide, I'm going to show a video demonstration, which is followed by a live demonstration. So if you have any questions, which I'm sure you do, please ask those questions in the live chat window, and our Q&A panel guys will take care of those sessions. If some of those sessions are not answered live, we'll make sure that those questions are actually those questions are answered live on our Hub community. So make sure that you join the Hub community, log in, and take a look at it. So on this session, we will be discussing how to connect an Extreme Campus controller and a Wing controller to an existing ExtremeCloud IQ environment. So let's get started. So before I go ahead and show you how does it work, I just wanted to take few minutes to discuss how this whole thing really works. So let's talk about XCC first. So XCC, when it comes to the XCC visibility into the cloud, I would like to divide it into two different portions. So the one portion is the monitoring portion, and the other portion is the management side of it. So for the monitoring portion, basically, you configure your XCC on-prem controller and point it to your specific RDC account, which is your XIQ account, right? Now, as soon as you point it to the XIQ RDC, your XCC is going to aggregate all the statistics coming from the clients, coming from the access points, and send it over to the ExtremeCloud IQ account. And this is where you have your visibility enabled. Now, in terms of licensing, you really don't need any kind of license. All you need is a ExtremeCloud IQ Connect level subscription, and you should be good with having visibility onto that account. Now, in terms of how it works, right? So XCC utilizes an API that basically sends the stats information to the XIQ. Now, the way it works, if some of you are already familiar with the way Nsight work, which used to be our monitoring, analytics, and reporting and troubleshooting tool for the legacy on-prem Wing platforms, it's exactly the same procedure. It's pretty much the same sort of API, and you basically use the Nsight policy and then point that to the XIQ. So that's how, in a nutshell, it works. So when it comes to the management side of it, so once you have your controllers onboarded, can you really manage it? Of course you can, but that management is actually done with the help of pilot level subscription. So you would actually need a pilot level XIQ subscription to be able to manage your on-prem controllers. Now, few bullet points here that when you add your XCC controller, you are actually only migrating or sharing the management plane with the XIQ. You are not really making any changes to the data plane that is already in place or any control plane that is already in place with regards to your on-prem controller. Both Identify and Wing 7 access points are capable of actually reporting into the XIQ via XCC, so that should not be a problem. So let's take a look at how does it work on Wing. So when it comes to Wing, it's a little bit different because in case of XCC, you have got a centralized controller, which is the aggregation point for your entire network. When it comes to client stats, analytics, a device such as access point, a switch, or switches that are managed by XCC, all those stats related to your network. Whereas in Wing, you have a controller and you do have remote sites because it's a distributed architecture, and each controller-less remote site has an RF domain manager access point, right? And that RF domain manager access point is responsible for sending the stats to the XIQ. So in this case, basically, you will have your controller using an Nsight policy, which is pointing to the XIQ as well as your RF domain manager APs that are actually scattered across different distributed sites. They will also be reporting their own stats into the XIQ. The licensing model doesn't really change whether you are working with XCC or XIQ or Wing in this case. When it comes to the management, it's the same thing. You're going to have pilot level subscription required to be able to manage your on-prem controller, and more on management I'm going to discuss later after the live video demonstration, like how exactly you are going to manage your on-prem controllers via XIQ. In terms of troubleshooting tools, so some of the well-known tools are access point test and remote debug, and you've got packet capture, alarms, or spectrum analysis and reporting and stuff. These are to be added, and so stay tuned for the future releases. Again, some points that I would like to highlight that again, in this scenario, you are only sharing your management plane. You are not really going to touch your control plane or your data plane in this case. The individual or the independent access points cannot directly report into XIQ. That's a very important point. So all the reporting is actually done via controller. So in case of Wing, if you have a Wing hardware chassis or a virtualized controller, you would be able to use this functionality. Or if you happen to have a virtual controller that is basically called VC or an access point based controller, in that case, you will also be able to send stats to the XIQ. The condition is it's got to be a controller. All right, so let's move on and see what are some of the prerequisites on the Wing side. So before you plan on adding your on-prem controller and have visibility into the XIQ, make sure that you are on one of these listed firmware versions. Ideally, you should be on the latest Wing release, which is currently 7.4.1.2, I guess. But stay tuned and take a look at the latest release notes. And for the XCC, I would say that you should be on release version 5 at minimum to be able to have visibility enabled. All right, so with this one out of the way, I'm gonna go ahead and play a video demonstration that will actually take you over and show you the procedure of how to actually connect XCC and Wing controller into the ExtremeCloud IQ. So let's get started.
Adding XCC and Wing controllers to XIQ is super easy. There's really only one extra step. As the current versions of XCC and Wing are not cloud native, we simply need to tell those controllers to point to the cloud, then onboard them just like any other device, and then they're online. So let's get started, shall we? The first thing we need to do is identify what data center we are connected to and what data center we need to add our devices. So I'm going to take a look, and I see here that it's ACH. So ACH is the RDC that I'm currently connected to. I can verify that with going to About ExtremeCloud IQ. And I see ach.ExtremeCloud IQ. That's in Switzerland in this case. And now I would go to my XCC instance, and I would go to Administration, System, Settings, and then I'll enable Cloud Visibility. So I've determined that ACH is my RDC. I'm going to add the extension CW, so it's ach-cw.extremecloudiq.com. So that's the host name to connect to the XIQ instance that I need to onboard to. I will note the serial number and the MAC address. And from this point on, it's a simple case of add devices, change the device type from Extreme Aerohive to controller, and then I just paste in their serial number and the MAC address. Then I'll add a location for the controller. So I'll pick this clinic here. Just simply say select. It'll auto place that. I click add devices. It'll go red cloud in the beginning, and then after some time it'll go green. Then you'll see both the XCC instance as well as all of its APs. Then you'll need to go and manually assign all the APs will be placed onto that same floor that you added XCC. They need to be the APs then need to be placed properly as their actual locations, and perhaps even changed to different floors, as XCC of course can manage the entire campus. So the placement will need to be changed. So next, we note ACH is the regional data center. It's a little bit different in Wing. I'm just going to go into the command line. I'm going to create an n-site policy. Instead of ACH minus CW, it's ACH minus Wing in this case. So I need to first create an n-site policy. Wing uses the n-site process to inform, to send information up to Cloud IQ. So after creating the policy, I will point my RF domains, whatever they are. It doesn't have to be at the RF domain level, but that's best practice in this case. So I'll use n-site policy that I just created in both of the RF domains, commit and write. Then, just like with XCC, I need to note the serial number and the MAC address. So how do I do that? Show version. And there it is. I grab my MAC address and my serial number. And from this point on, it's the same onboarding process into XIQ as XCC. So I'll go do that now. Add devices. Change again to controllers. They're both XCC and Wing are both controllers as far as XIQ is concerned. Paste in the serial number and the MAC address. Place the VX9000 in this case onto a floor. Click select. Add devices. And it's the same. It will take some bit of time until I get my green clouds, and once I get my green clouds showing that I'm connected, my APs will be there. I'll repeat the assign location process as well, just like I did with XCC to get the proper assignment. Now that you've onboarded your XCC or Wing, we're going to go and access SSH. To do that, make sure that your global settings are set, that SSH availability is enabled. And then I'm going to show you on the Wing side how to both connect via SSH as well as the web GUI. So I'll go into the host, the controller host in this case. I'll go to configure, and then I have the two options, SSH command line connectivity and SSH web connectivity. Both, just like any other device, I select a runtime. I enable SSH. After some time, it'll give me the IP address as well as a port assignment. So now I'm just going to open up PuTTY, put in that IP address, change the default port to this new port that is good for just this one session. I'll open, add the host key into my cache, and then log in as normal. So as you can see, the PuTTY session is just working, and I have full and complete access to my configuration. Right? Now let's move on to web connectivity. And first I'll disable SSH, which is a good best practice before I leave. And then I'll move on to web connectivity, set the runtime exactly as I did before. I'll click enable SSH web, and here I have a link again with a custom port, and it will open up in the browser just like you would a normal process, just with that custom port. And there's my access. So that's it. Thank you very much for your time, ladies and gentlemen, and good luck onboarding.
All right, so hopefully that the video was helpful. I know it's a little bit quick. That's why I'm going to have a live demonstration session now. And before I jump onto the live demonstration session, I would like to check if there are any questions.
Yeah, Race, yeah, that was really nicely done. So we do have questions that are coming in already.
Okay.
First one here, what are the prerequisites for onboarding Wing or XCC onto XIQ?
Okay, so in terms of Wing, I would say that there are only really two prerequisites. One of them being the supported firmware version on your controller as well as on your access points. So make sure that you have got the right version running on your devices. And the second thing is the correct RDC configuration. You should know which RDC your XIQ account is on, and then within the n-site policy, you should be using that correct RDC. So that's on the Wing side of the house. On the XCC side of it, it's a little bit more simpler, I would say, because it uses kind of a connector rather than an n-site policy sort of thing. So all you need is just be on the supported firmware version, which is XCC version 5 and above, and have your cloud visibility enabled.
Okay. Next question here, and I can tell somebody's already thinking ahead. The question is, do I need to add every access point as well as the controllers to the inventory in XIQ?
All right, glad that you asked. So the answer is no, not really. So as soon as you add your controller, since your on-prem controllers are the aggregation point and kind of manager for your entire wireless network, and they are aware of your pretty much all clients and the access points in the network, as soon as you add a controller, it's going to start reporting all the devices that are adopted by it. So you don't really need to individually add access points to your XIQ account.
Okay. Next question that we have here. How often do the XCC and Wing controllers report their stats into XIQ?
Yeah, that's a really good question because often the on-prem controllers usually take care of pretty large networks. Like you may have a controller that is maybe taking care of 1,000 or maybe 2, 3, or 4,000 access points at a time, right? So the default polling interval or the reporting interval is set to 5 minutes. So it is 5 minutes. It's hard coded. It's not configurable at the moment. It is hard coded to 5 minutes for a reason that you want to give some time to your on-prem controller or your RF domain manager access points on remote sites to receive the stats and analytics from clients from the associated devices and accumulate all of it and then send it across over to your XIQ. Yeah, so it's 5 minutes.
Perfect. Yeah, and this one came in right after that one as well. Kind of a follow-up. Is the communications between XCC and the Wing controllers and XIQ secure?
Yeah, so when it comes to cloud, the first question people would usually ask about is the security, right? So and we are aware of it. So yeah, it is secure. So the way we secure it is when you onboard your on-prem controller, if it's a hardware controller, a physical appliance, doesn't matter if it's XCC or Wing, we use the manufacturer's certificate that is installed on that device. And we use that certificate, which is signed by Extreme Certificate or CA authority. And XIQ would actually validate that certificate upon onboarding, right? And if you are using a virtual environment, let's say you have a VX9000 or an XCC 61 series of controller, right? So, and if you're running it on VMware or something, then in that case, when you load the license on it, that certificate is going to be validated against the XIQ. So yeah, it's based on certificate validation, and I will probably show you later where in the command line when you set the Nsight policy, there's a portion of the command where you actually enforce certificate validation, right? So it is secure.
Perfect. Yeah, next question we have coming in here. This is good as well. Can I see heat maps and other related RF related information for the on-prem access points?
Yeah, absolutely. So the best part about this integration is, and this is only the first phase of our integration, right? There's going to be a phase 2 and phase 3 where we will be introducing more functionalities, more features, more enhancements. So the best part about this first phase of integration is after you are done onboarding your on-prem controllers, from then on, it's just about monitoring and viewing your XIQ devices like you would normally monitor or view any stats of a legacy XIQ device, right? So there's no much difference there. So let me show you, right? So if you wanna show the heat maps, you can actually go here, Network 360 Monitor, and I've got a site here with a couple of APs in there. And let me pick this site. On this site, I've got some access points. Here you go. So here I can actually click on this, and it's telling me that this AP has got two clients connected. So I can click on this, and it's going to take me to a different window where I would be able to see pretty much all the stats about this client. Now, if I'm to show the heat map, I can actually go to my Network 360 plan, go to the same site, and show on heat map, and then just kind of refresh it. So here you go. I've got my heat maps for the two APs. I can also see my channels on different bands, say 2.4 and 5 gigahertz, and SNR, RSSI values and stuff. So yeah, once you have onboarded, you can actually place your access points into the correct location like you would normally do with an XIQ access point.
All right. And the next question we have here kind of ties into something that was touched on in the video, which is after onboarding a controller, how would I configure it? Can I use the native XIQ policy configuration?
All right. So the native XIQ policy configuration is not currently supported for the XCC and Wing on-prem controllers. What you can do and what is made available to you for the management is the SSH proxy and the web proxy functionality. So to be able to do that, let me just go ahead real quick and show you that. First thing, you will have to actually go to the global settings and make sure that you have SSH availability is enabled under the global settings. Then you head back to your devices, pick up your controller. Say in my case, I'm gonna pick up VX9000, or here, go to configure, and you can actually either enable the SSH connectivity right here, set the time of the duration for your session, and it's gonna give you an IP address and a port that you can use with your favorite SSH client to log into your controller. Likewise, you can also do web proxy as well.
Okay, and another one about regarding the SSH. How does the SSH proxy work in XIQ? Is it done via an API or some sort of jump SSH service?
All right, so yeah, that's a good question. So let me just real quick show you how does it really work. So it is not really an API in terms of functionality. It's not an API. It's more of a reverse SSH tunnel. So, and it's widely used in the industry. So the advantage of that is when you first onboard your controller is gonna make a connection with the XIQ, right? So you already have a connection that has actually traversed your firewalls, your NAT, and everything, and eventually your controller reaches the XIQ server, right? So the XIQ is aware of where the controller is coming from. So when you initiate a web proxy or say SSH proxy session in order to configure your on-prem controller, it's actually going to create a reverse connection from your local on-prem controller to the XIQ server. And basically, that is really helpful when your on-prem controllers are behind the firewalls or NAT. So if you go here, right, make sure that your SSH is enabled, and then head over to your devices. I'm gonna pick up one of my controllers here. Just gonna be this guy, maybe. Figure. So when you try to establish the first connection, it's going to take a little bit of time. So usually, but that's how usually you configure it. It may take up to like 30-40 seconds, so it's already there. So I can actually use this IP address and this port and log in via my SSH client.
Okay. Yeah, another one that just came in also regarding the SSH sessions there is just regarding the again around the security for that, which basically is asking what sort of security is in place regarding the actual timeout of those SSH sessions. What happens when it times out?
Yeah. So I mean, ideally, as it was demonstrated in the video as well, that ideally when you're done with the SSH session, you should manually turn off your session. I mean, that's the best practice. You shouldn't really leave it on. And once the session is expired, the SSH session is actually terminated by the client, by the controller. So when you establish this, the XIQ basically tells your controller the duration of this session, and then after that session timeout, you lose the connection.
Perfect. And another one here regarding just around client information with the XCC or Wing sessions that have been onboarded here. Are you able to see the wireless client devices when you have onboarded a Wing or an XCC controller?
Yes, absolutely. So it's exactly going to mirror what you see on your on-prem controller. So for instance, I've got an XCC primary controller here, and I've got a VX9000 primary controller here, and I've got a couple of APs. So let's take a look at what sort of information is available. So these are my APs that are on-prem, reporting their host name, uptime, the IP address, um, number of clients. I will go over a little bit more details about where do you see all the client stats, and then of course you have MAC address reported, serial numbers, model number, and not only that, but also the radio interface details like channel numbers, power, and all that stuff, right? A little bit more detail. If you click on one of the devices, so it's going to show you the host name, the status of the device right here, and in a quick snapshot, it's going to tell you the CPU usage and the memory usage on that device. Plus, this timeline actually shows you how many clients are actually connected over the period of time. Clicking on the system information will give you general information about this, right? And then you can also see clients by either clicking here. So you see the client, but of course there is not much detail available here. To see more client details, the right place is actually Client 360. You can go to Client 360 and pick, suppose I have got this client here. So you see that this is the client connecting to one of my APs, and which is now connecting back to my XIQ, reporting into XIQ. Towards the left of the screen, you see the general details like IP address and MAC address and stuff. Whereas here, that's your connection. This stuff is really cool. Here, the timeline, connectivity timeline basically shows you the healthy score, plus if there were any alarms. So I did not have any alarms while I connected this client. So otherwise, you will see that as well, right? There's some more stats about client statistics, RF statistics like so. The activity of the client. So when first client connected, what sort of communication happened between client and the access point, and some more details on the network usage, like application visibility. So look at that. I've got YouTube, which is 88%. Yeah, okay. So that's my son's iPad, actually. So, all right. So you've got um, top 10 applications. So for this to be visible here, of course, you need to have application visibility enabled on your access points.